one thing I want to talk about today with Idaho 4. I don't even know where to start because I have a whole video that I want to talk about.
Yes.
And his psychology and how everybody's saying, oh, he's innocent because of this stupid book that came out. He's not innocent. Let me just say this. You don't admit to 4 unalivings.
Oh, I got cold.
To go to prison for the rest of your life and not throw somebody else under a bus that could be involved or is involved or whatever. Like, Narcissists would throw somebody under the bus in 2 seconds if they had anybody to throw under the bus. And like I tried to tell people, this was the one case that I remote viewed the entire thing. I followed him through the house in the dark. I was a bystander, I was the perpetrator, and I was the victim. All at separate times. I seen what the dude looked like. That's how we described him. Yeah. Everybody wants to make Brent fit or whatever. There's nothing that I described about Brent. Okay? Maybe the beard and mustache. We don't know if he had one because he went to a freaking barber. So, you know, like I try to tell people, 100% is not going to fit the reading. There's stuff that comes in around. It was done live. So there might be a few things that maybe don't fit. But 98% fit Brian Koberger. It fit his life. It fit what he looked like. It fit where he lived. I watched him do it by himself.
Yep.
And that is all I will say. And that is the one case that I am sure of. And everything I got, I've never had so many validations on a case. Everything fits that we've now found out. You will never convince me otherwise. So all these people coming on my channel and saying Brent, no, not Brent.
No.
Like Tracy was telling me. Tell me what you told me last night, Tracy.
You know, and I just want to reiterate something too, because the fact that with readings like that, you can pick up the energy all around a case at any specific time, even energy of where it's taking place, things like that. And I guess because it was so pushed by other people from the outside that they were really thinking and going in that direction with Brent, that when the police decided to just kind of look at him or whatever, they did that. They cleared him. And they also had shared some information, like with the family reaching out and saying, you know, he was a veteran and had some traumatic brain injury being in the service. And one thing that they were very upset about was the fact that everybody had even brought his name up, because, you know, with traumatic brain injuries, people don't usually commit crimes like that. They're not organized like that. Traumatic brain injury will cause a person usually to be more inwardly of harm, or thinking about unaliving themselves or something like that, or with something that might be like a trigger that's kind of in violation of their own personal space. And, you know, that's the difference when it comes to being very careful about discussing things like that and pushing kind of narratives like that, because I don't know if everybody paid attention, but even his own dad, when they got pulled over by the police and they were kind of like, well, where are you coming from? Asking all these questions. And his dad kind of leaned back like this. And I think because he wanted the officer to view Brian. And I found that very interesting, because it was like he's looking at areas on his skin that may have possibly been harmed, I think, by a weapon. And the dad all of a sudden was, you know, because he talked about leaving from Washington, blah, blah, blah. And when he's having the conversation, he's basically like talking about how crazy everything was out there and how, you know, that was just like something that happened over there, right? And the police were engaging with him and all that kind of stuff. And I just found it kind of interesting, because at that moment I was like, I really feel deep down that his dad knew that he was the one that did it. But I also think at some point it wasn't just a moment of just conversation. It was almost like hoping that he would look in that path rather than looking at his son. That was my own personal take on it. I could be wrong. But it was just an interesting, like, exchange. So that's what I left off with that. But yes, people with traumatic brain injuries, that's a very difficult thing because there's really not a whole lot you can do as far as, healing when you have something like that happen to you. But, his family wanted people to understand that, he served in the service. Like, he wasn't that kind of person. And it was just very sad, like, listening to that when we know who the person is. But, and, sometime or maybe down in the future or whatever, that's like a nice conversation to have with, like, that family,
The one thing I want to add about Brian Koberger is just because someone doesn't look like a psychopath doesn't mean they aren't a psychopath. Psychopaths watch people. They learn how to blend in. But if you watch even if you watch psychologists, they will literally break it down because they can see the thing. So, watch psychologists about it because, he has OCD, just like Spirit said. He has control issues, just like Spirit said. And again, this was about Maddie.
Yes.
He was OCD. He wanted to go in when he wanted to go in, and he could not change once she had it planned for a certain date and a certain time. He did not expect Kaylee, and all of them to be there. And so, he got mad, and they were in the wrong place, wrong time, and that's why there was more than one.
Oh, he was totally locked and loaded to go and do whatever it was that night. And he had no doubt in his mind that was when he was going to do it. I mean, for God's sakes, he was there committing this crime while they actually had police officers in the field down a little bit further, questioning underage drinkers or whatever. I mean, that goes to show you, because anybody else in the right mind would be like, oh, there's cops down there. I obviously am not going to do this tonight. He didn't even think about it. It was like, boom.
It's an OCD thing. And I like to watch shows where I'm learning about the psychology and stuff because it helps me in my work. And I wish that more people would do that so that they could understand how psychopaths are, because they don't look like a psychopath. They don't act like a psychopath. And there could have been a lot of different things happening that night, but that does not mean that the dude's innocent and he just admitted to 4 unalivings for no reason. They are good at presenting as normal. That's what I'm saying. So
good.
But there were so many psychologists.
He's normal, though. Honestly, I think there was. And always comes out later. I knew there was something off about that person. Like, I knew there was something not right. And they want to now kind of stretch it out to some like diagnosis or whatever, as far as being autistic or whatever. Because you have to remember too, he had a past of heroin addiction. Heroin changes your brain. It makes you things you would never even think of doing, because the brain chemistry changes in the frontal lobe, and those are things you can't get back. Like, once they're totally, you're never 100% normal or however you were before when you start messing around with heroin. Never ever. And when there were probably a series of events, because like everybody heard the party, this, the that, like all those different things that were building up to this one night that he was just bound and determined to go there. And I don't know if anybody else had happened to catch it either, but even the next day when news reporters started showing up and all that other baloney, you could pretty much look like there's cars sitting up at the top of the hill as they're broadcasting. Like, I mean, how crazy do you have to be, to do that? I mean, that's someone that's very disturbing. Like an Israel Keys case, and maybe Koberger might be the same way and have that similar kind of just disturbing kind of way that he laughs about things, that he almost when they're being questioned by the police or whatever, it's almost like they're laughing in the sense where they are so fixated on having their own personal visions and experiences in their own brain, they don't want to share that stuff. They definitely don't want to tell the police about it, because that's like that, whatever they're getting from committing crimes like that, that's when they're fulfilling every desire that they had envisioned and all those types of things. And it's pretty freaking sick to listen to it afterwards. But again, another one that's fascinating.
Yeah. So, I mean, you could see how he is in prison too. You know, can't get along with people. He's controlling.
Yep.
Has to wash his hands 50 times a day. People need to understand how OCD is. That's exactly why he had to do it when he had to do it.
Yep.
And the others weren't. And even the EVP has validated this. I mean, I did it just to get the validation. It even said one target waitress.
Oh, absolutely. And the rest of everything went down because when you realize that, oh, this is not going to be the fantasy that I had in my mind about what's going to happen, now you have all that adrenaline kicking in. He's pissed off because, again, it's built on the fantasy that he has in his mind of what he's doing. He's acting that out physically as he has, probably gone over a million times in his head. It just had to get to the point where he was ready to pull the switch and boop.
Well, I mean, look at what he had on his computer that was deep dived by, they deep dove his computer and they found, that he was looking into pornography that was about, RAPS. So, sexual assaults. And it was interesting because the EVP said this was a RAPE because that was originally what his plan was, but he got ticked off.
Yep.
And he probably couldn't, perform because he got ticked off.
Well, I think too is if you're being kind of overtaken by somebody that he wasn't expecting either, and unfortunately, I think with Maddie with Kaylee, sorry, where she had the blankets on, I think that having the blankets wrapped around her legs and somebody compressing on that, she was having a very hard time trying to untie herself, I guess, and get free to be able to beat the crap out of him. Because I honestly think if it wasn't for that, she might have been able to overcome him and beat the crap out of him. I think that when you have that, did it? When you have that fear, thank you. I think I really do feel like she was
timing of that,
kick his freaking butt because that was one of the most outspoken people about the whole thing coming through in spirit. Was she was so determined to tell people what a piece of crap, and if there was any way she could have done anything to protect her sister, she would have done it. It was just physically impossible the way that she was kind of all bound up like that.
I think I was just psychic about that because when I came back to sit down, I was like, that REM pod's going to go off. And then we started talking about this and then the REM pod went off. And I'm just like, they're validating the whole thing that we've been talking about, in my opinion. But,
absolutely.
I get so pissed off because people will come on the TED channeling where he psychoanalyzed Brian Koberger down to the T and say, oh, Brent. I'm like, where does this reading say Brent? It fucking doesn't. So why you want to argue with stuff that came out before it was ever released and it validated so much? Like, I'm sorry, you don't get that much validation on someone that's innocent. You don't.
Nope. And
they all explained him the same.
They did. And also, take into consideration for he's no longer alive either. So for the sake of his own family, knowing that he's not that person, and traumatic brain injury is very, 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 it's a hard thing for someone to have that because, that changes and shift. It's kind of like with shaken baby syndrome, when you take a baby and you shake them so hard, their brain is blah, 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 all inside. And unfortunately, a lot of times they don't survive from that. But then you have a grown person that kind of goes through something very similar, only they're able to overcome that part of it. But they're never really the same, in their brain again. But they're not the violent type of anything like that. They're usually taking all of that and bringing it inward and thinking about ways to they just want to, relieve, I guess, themselves from their own personal pain. So it kind of really is disturbing for them, Yeah.
Well, and then they blame Jack and everybody else. And it's just like, there's no proof for any of those people to be involved other than what this book is saying. And this book is not he's not investigator on the case. And he's going to get sued. So
more than likely, but they have a couple, and I know it's very still hard to revisit that time frame and everything that had happened, but listening to the stories of the families and the friends and how terrified they all were, they were literally gone to a hotel together, and like shaking and crying and holding one another because that's how terrified they were. They didn't know like who had done this. They didn't know if there were people still out for the rest of everybody. It was like just horrible.
And Jack was included in that.
Yeah. And I'm sorry because a traumatic brain injury is just it's a horrible thing. It's so horrible, and there's really not a lot you can do. There's no cure.
I feel bad that they keep pushing it on Brent because he had some issues when there's absolutely no proof tying him into anything. They've come up with connection with Brian Koberger, but that doesn't mean anything. Like, I could know this person down the street and they could be a murderer, but that doesn't mean I'm involved. And he's not even alive to like defend himself. And then you have somebody over here that straight up said, I did it so that nobody saw the evidence in court. Because why? He didn't want to he wanted the control of knowing why he did what he did.
Yep.
And he didn't want anybody else to know why he did what he did. He didn't want it to come out in court. He didn't want to have to say anything. He didn't want, all the evidence that they had they don't know all the evidence. People don't know all the evidence they had. It'll never, that was why he did what he did. That's why he said, okay,
Absolutely. Because, and honestly, if he, let's say, he was a teacher or whatever and studying all this thing pretty intensively, pursuing possibly people that might want to talk about an experience like that, all those different things make him smart enough where he probably wouldn't confess to doing something, like that. That's how smart he was.
And narcissists will throw anybody under the bus that they can. I mean, he's not going to commit something by himself and then not throw somebody else under the bus.
He had no friends, so he obviously didn't have any.
He was a loner. Who would help him with this? Because now I have somebody saying, "Oh, someone else killed Ethan." No, I saw the dude do it to everybody. Yeah, I followed him around the house. This is why I get so mad because the victims and their family don't deserve it. It's over and done with, and it keeps being rehashed, and new people that are innocent keep being brought into this, and bullshit conspiracies keep being brought up. And I know that they chose me to be their voice. So when people come into the channel and they disrespect the readings by just not even watching it, throwing out names, kind of irritates me. And then I know I shouldn't care because they're just trolls. It doesn't matter. But you're sitting there just throwing, okay, well, here's Brent, so he must be him, when nothing matches the reading for him. Where are you coming to that conclusion just because that's what your opinion is and that's what you think? And it makes me upset because the victims showed me. I mean, like I said, I followed him through the house. I've never done that in any case before. And
not only that, Rochelle, but how many different places and people in that, and that's another thing that I find very fascinating, because not only are you remote viewing, but you're also in him and in the victims, everything that's and also watching as a third party, almost watching it all go down. You saw from every other angle you could possibly see it from, and that's pretty fascinating.
That was fascinating in that case. Yeah. And that just shows me I was supposed to work it and I was supposed to be their voice, and they all showed me the same person. A jacked up Ted Bundy with blue eyes. They were adamant about the blue eyes and the curly hair for every single reading, and how he was dressed. I mean, I said he was black. I mean, they said he was dressed in black with just the eyes, and that's exactly what was seen. So, I mean, for me to get those details, obviously the rest of it's right. You can't just get, I mean, you know what I mean? It all matches the stuff that we knew prior. So this is why it's extremely frustrating when people just want to throw out random shit because of this, Well,
don't you think also, too, that Spirit spoke very loud in the sense because they knew that there was a possibility that he would try to pull something off, in the sense where he was already laying out exactly how to, basically commit the perfect crime, but he wasn't that intelligent when he didn't really take into consideration when he probably opened the knife when he got it in the mail or whatever. It was like, oh, and touched the button.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, it was because he didn't think at the time, as he was so excited to get the knife, to put on the gloves before he took it out, and that's how it got on the snap.
Exactly.
Every other time he put on gloves. So this is why there's only that little bit of DNA, and that's the other thing that you brought up, Tracy, about him being, a criminal justice major. Hello.
Yep.
He planned this. He's going to cover himself up, so he's not going to leave DNA. He's not going to leave physical evidence. Duh.
And there's the OCD that just kicks in because he's like already going into that fantasy in his mind as soon as he got the knife because he knew what he was going to do with it, And
why did he tear apart his car? He's so innocent.
Exactly.
And throw things in the trash and, have all this stuff on his. I mean, the family saw that he was following Maddie on Instagram, and they've said it multiple times. I don't understand why people want to argue with that.
Yeah. And her mom has basically said the same thing. She was very, pretty sure that she was the target too. And, and
that came in the reading. So that's validated too. I was drawn mostly to Maddie for some reason, but Kaylee was the strongest speaker.
Yes, she's like the mama of all of them. And she wanted to make sure that they all got justice, especially because they needed their families to be at peace with everything after the fact. And having to be able to come to peace with something that is such a violent crime like that is not an easy thing to do. It's something that changes your life forever and ever and ever. And to keep going on and on and on with the extra narratives. Oh, it's this one and it's that one. No, it's not. He already...
He admitted to it. I mean, I don't know what else people want. No. I mean, he's a narcissist. If he didn't do it, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't admit to it.
Yep. Well, and that's another reason why I think the book came out too. I think that's part of a little group or close
Pro-burgers.
Yeah, exactly. That because he did agree to the sentencing and everything on the basis that he would not be eligible for parole. He's in there for life. But unless they come across another type of new evidence or whatever, then that might be a different story for him. And there's not going to be any new evidence. You can do whatever you want to do. And I think, even even Idaho itself is just you know what, we don't want to revisit this. He's already admitted what he did. They don't want to be a part of any of that because it's just, because of somebody's ego that he wants to kind of control the situation yet again and say, oh, write this book for me because it's the only hope I have. It's kind of, that's my feeling.
He could have easily persuaded someone to do that because that's what psychopaths do. They're good at tricking people, There could have been something underneath that. And, I don't know, all these people are in the damn conspiracy mindset when sometimes things are just as they are. Sometimes there's not a real I think people want more of an answer because they can't wrap their minds around it. But I mean, Ted Bundy did the same thing. Other serial killers do the same thing. It's not like it hasn't happened, because I've had people say, oh, well, there's no way that one person could have done this. Yes, there is. When
even Dr. Gary said the same exact thing. And that's exactly what happened. Yeah.
And Ted did it. Ted did the same thing. And so did that other guy, the other one that he entered through a sliding glass door with a knife, and it was very similar to this as well. I can't remember his name.
I can't either, but I know exactly. And yes, and that's exactly what they do. And the same amount of adrenaline that goes into the whole fantasy is, I mean, you got to remember, they have, especially if they're stalking somebody for 6 months or whatever, you're putting all of that energy into those thoughts and those fantasies in your mind. And then when you go to act on it, that's what you're expecting to get. And then, now someone's awake, and now you have people that are going to fight you that you weren't expecting. And a couple of them, especially being girls, that you don't expect them to have that kind of, powerful punch or whatever. You're also talking about dealing with athletes. I mean, these were all athletes. They're going to kick your butt, Absolutely, and especially
Well, he's
in
the box. So, he got it. He got he got in shape. He boxed. He ran, and he ran 7 miles. No, it wasn't Dennis Rader. It's on one of the validation videos.
Yeah.
He actually had researched him.
Yep.
It was somebody else. I wish I could remember.
I know
right
I can't remember his name either. But
yeah,
but it's very, one.
he researched all these guys. Like,
And that's another thing that a lot of these people will do. Like, if you ever, even Israel Keys was a fan of so many people. And what's more interesting is the fact that they have a tendency to follow these like the ley lines of where other serial killers have gone. Like, look at the maps in Washington, and then you have even in Idaho is a very crazy influence. Yep, like that too. It is
it has that energy that draws them in.
Yeah. Yep.
And I was literally just watching that because I watched Signs of a Psychopath on HBO Max because I just started watching that because I like to learn. So spirit can be like they're like this person or they're like that person. Right. So I can kind of from a spiritual perspective, psychoanalyze them myself. And have spirit psychoanalyze them. And they were literally just talking about how psychopaths research serial killers.
Yep.
Research all of that kind of stuff, like horror movies, which is interesting because serial killer and horror movies came in the reading. Like, I didn't know any of this stuff when I learned a lot from psychology and stuff just from Ted channeling and showing me, hey, this is what the brain is doing with the whole, when they were showing me the stuff going on in the brain. And that was his way of showing me a psychopath. And he was like, he's a narcissist and he's OCD. Like, I learned a lot. And so every case I work that's similar, I learned the psychopathy of them. And so I'm noticing too, like, I'm able to recognize it a little bit easier now too. Like, when I looked at David, nope, psychopath right away, knew it, told Tracy.
Yep.
As soon as I saw a picture of him, I was like, I don't even need to do a reading. I can tell you this guy's a psychopath, and I can tell you he's got the serial killer energy, and who knows if there's not other victims.
Yeah, that is true. Very much.
Would anybody like to come on and talk about Idaho 4? I have all these pro burgers coming and commenting on stuff now, and I'm like, you didn't even watch the reading? Like, why are you even here? Like, I don't even get it. Like,
do you call them pro burgers?
That's what they are. They're pro burgers. And then I get constantly on TikTok. Did he do it by himself? Did I say anybody else did it? No. So yeah, he did it by himself. I only saw him. I followed only him around the house. And I watched him do it to everybody. At one point, I think I was in the right order, and then it was like backwards the next time. So I still followed his butt through. Oh, she wants to come on. Yep. Okay, let's see.
Oh, yeah. Someone also that's very fascinated with Ted, and I know that you still kind of needed to do a little bit of research, like on Mr. Who. You can maybe better explain to people like what the psychopathy is with people who are kind of with the OCD kind of obsessive, I guess, genetic kind of brain patterns or whatever.
So psychopathy can be considered a personality disorder. It is very similar to what we call the cluster B aspect of personality disorders, the categorization. Oh, and for the record, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in California. Not a psychologist, but I do hold 2 master's degrees, and I work with survivors of pathological love relationships and narcissistic abuse.
See, I told you she's brilliant. And a lot of going on. And you do have a lot of information because, not just for specializing in certain things, but the overall dynamic of mental health and how people are affected by other things kind of is one big range of, it's almost like a tree that branches off in all different directions,
Yes. So I can't off the top of my head share exactly which parts of the specific parts, the names of the parts of the brain are affected, but these people are born with faulty genetic wiring. So their
Yep.
brains are literally programmed to be different from the rest of ours. And the areas of the brain that are impaired, we call these impairments.
Mm-hmm.
The areas of the brain that are impaired in psychopathy are the ability to maintain control of impulses.
Mm-hmm.
There are impairments in being able to relate to people, meaning that they have little to no empathy.
Yep.
They you can present when you're getting their truest self, when they're not masking, when they're not hiding.
Mm-hmm.
So their personalities tend to be pretty dull, almost like
Yep.
you are talking to someone with very little depth. Kind of
No
like
empathy.
how
It's funny that you say that because that's
empathy.
exactly like how, like, if I were to look at him face to, because I had a dream about him once, I swear, and I was like, I had to do this test apparently, and one a part of that test was to like look him in the eyes and see if I could find any empathy for him, and I was like, I started to feel bad for him, and I was like, why do I feel bad? And then I'm realizing like there's not even like whatever is supposed to be there is not there in this person, and it's like being able to have that human connection with somebody. And I don't want to say it has anything to do with somebody's soul or anything like that. There's parts of, I think, a person that leaves them when they have like things like, drug addiction that is really bad,
Yeah.
especially with heroin. I have always had my own experience with people like that who have had heroin addiction, and there's something that just changes internally with them. And that's kind of like, and I really felt empathetic for him in my dream in that moment. And I was like, wait a minute, what are you doing? You're not supposed to feel empathy for him. I'm like, wake up, Tracy, wake up. But I think at the same time, I think I was just kind of reaching for that because I wanted to feel like there's somewhere inside him that he did actually care about other people rather than just himself, you know?
It's a prime
They don't have
example
empathy
of
though.
why people stay in pathological love relationships is they're looking for that empathy that was presented to them
Yeah,
at the beginning of the relationship.
that makes a lot of sense.
It's very hard for us normies, I guess people with normal personalities, to
Yep.
imagine that someone could not have a conscience or empathy. It's just
Mm-hmm.
unfathomable to us. I don't think we will ever really get it. I
No,
don't
you're
get it.
right. You're absolutely
Yeah.
right. Because there's many, many times because I try to go to that level. And there's times too, there's like just something, especially when I'm pulled to a person like that. And Israel Keys is like probably the biggest example of that because I was like, wait a minute, how come he can be like so likable, but then he does this? And I'm like, he is
Ted
one of
was.
those. I know. Well, if I ever had the chance to meet him too, I'd probably be the same way. Like, wow, he's just so.
Well, like
And
I
he
said, we'd get kidnapped. I mean,
exactly. And then
you
we'd be
know,
like looking for someone like you to talk to. Like, hello, can you come find us, please?
you know. That's. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why he did what he. That's why he
Yeah.
could get what he got because he was so charming and he was so handsome,
So,
and the women weren't
yeah.
afraid of him, so they
Ted?
let down their guard. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Ted?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yep.
some women were turned off by him. But,
Mm-hmm. But he was able to maintain other relationships with women too, which is very interesting because
Yeah, but they
I
were
know
fake.
it always. Yeah, but
They didn't. They didn't contain love or empathy because the psychopaths are
Yeah.
not capable of love.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely. Well, not for anybody else, but themselves.
It was. I think it was more of a front.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, too,
Well, no
like,
different than the other ones that are married, like Rex.
well, that too, but also if it's like that, when you're talking about that controlling type of relationship too, that's very different. That whole aspect of and even sometimes like within codependency, it's like you feel like you cannot live without that person. And if you're being controlled at the same time, it's like there's just a way of like somebody's brain being like they can't pick up the things to walk away from it, or they can't walk away from it, if that makes sense.
There's a very specific dynamic that comes out in pathological love relationships that's not usually actual codependency.
Mhm.
Trauma bonding is what
Yeah.
it is.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah,
You know, and
Yeah.
the narcissist gets the person to trauma bond to them to make them feel like they can't live without them, and then
Oh,
they
yeah.
literally change their brain neural pathways.
Yeah.
It's
In
Yeah.
fact,
I just learned all that, and I was just like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, there's a name for this.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
so now it's helped me understand it a little bit better because it's happening so much. It does happen so much.
Yeah, the
does.
scientific research on these types of relationships
Yeah.
demonstrate that the vast majority of the victims
Mm-hmm.
were not quote unquote codependent. They're high achieving, they're driven, they're
Mhm.
smart, they're high degrees of empathy, they
Yep.
work hard, they tend to be really great people, they want to make the world a better place and have everyone get along, and this makes them that it's these what we call personality super traits that make them a target for psychopaths.
Yeah.
So an empath and a narcissist relationship because empaths always want to do everything for everybody. So
Absolutely.
the narcissist is like, oh, I could take advantage of that person real easy.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah, so
and
it's-
especially with a high degree of emotional intelligence too, because that always fascinates me because they kind of like when you meet somebody that is so, I guess dysfunctional, it would be the word. You overcompensate, I think, because you actually, you know, the fixer thing or the whole like, well, if I love them enough, like I can do this and make them awesome and wonderful, you know?
Yeah.
And before you know it, you're living in a glass house in a basement at a bakery somewhere. I don't know if you know that TV show on Netflix, the U one, where he literally locks in on his victims. It's a very, it's interesting because it reminds me so much of how it could actually be, like, if that makes sense. It's very true. Like, it really does come across, like, it's laid out so right in your face, like, this could possibly, and it's not so much like the physicality of a glass house or whatever, but it's the whole, like, being, like, chained to that person, entangled with that person. It's just, it's very interesting. Very interesting.
So what looks like codependency to uninformed people is actually a result of the trauma from cognitive dissonance in the relationship. Most survivors in the research don't have a pre-existing history of trauma or battered woman syndrome or daddy issues or whatever.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, that's why we need you here.
Well, yeah, the codependency goes along with the trauma bonding because, like I said, it makes them feel like they can't live without them, and that becomes part of it, and then they believe it, and then they're getting criticized. Like, literally, then they get stuck and they don't know what to do because they brainwash them into thinking you can't be without me, you can't live without me, no one's gonna want you, you know, and they break them down so much to where they don't think they can leave. You know?
Yep.
But I have a couple of questions in the chat I want to answer real quick. Mama Tracy wanted to know why they left, why Brian left Dylan alive, and I just think she wasn't in the way. I think he was on a mission. He went. Kaylee, Maddie, Xana walked in because she heard something. He chased Xana, got Xana in the hallway, and then Ethan because he was there. He didn't want him waking up, and he was a male, so he didn't have the time at this point, and she wasn't worth it to go and break into her room. Plus, she went in there and locked the door. So it just wasn't. She wasn't in the way.
Exactly. He was probably exhausted by then too.
Yeah,
you know,
and he was just trying to get out of there at that point because it wasn't the plan to kill all of them. And then people are strange. It was Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, Ethan. So, and that was the thing. Ethan went upstairs to tell me that's where the, and that was like the only thing great he gave me in the reading because the chat was so loud that it interfered with that reading, and he pointed upstairs to tell me that's where the target was. But I found it interesting. He's come in the EVP twice now, and he wasn't very strong during the readings, but he said his name twice. So I found that kind of interesting.
Yeah, well, I also kind of wondered too is where one of his wounds were, if he wasn't like kind of like startled and like woken up kind of like in a fog at the same time, and maybe that's when, because
if he killed Xana and then he says, "Oh, there's this guy here," and he might wake up, or if he did start to wake up, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's just Dylan was too much. She wasn't in the way, and she was in a room locked in.
Yeah.
So at that point.
Yeah, I'm sure by that point he's just so exhausted, and it wasn't part of the fantasy, anyways. He didn't, that's not what he was.
None of them were. Just Maddie was. It just all went wrong because being OCD, and I'm pretty sure that sipping tea can tell you she dropped off. They have to complete something that they have to do it at that point in time. I keep getting reminded of this. I want to say it was like a Criminal Minds episode where there was a serial killer that had OCD, and he had to do things at a certain time, a certain way, like couldn't be changed.
Yeah.
And it's that sort of thing.
It could. Well, actually, I'm trying to think of the ones that were, because they were very specific personas on there.
And the other thing I've learned too is some narcissists like to put it out there and brag about things, while the other ones will like the control of it.
Yep.
So there's two different kinds. You have the ones that are like very,
and that's part of the reason why I think he didn't want to go to trial in the sense
he likes
of
the
that.
control. He
wants that fantasy. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, absolutely. I mean, I would like to write him.
I would love for you to do that. Sometimes they get interviewed on other. Yeah,
well,
exactly.
He watched my video, but he only watched the one that was profiling him. Yeah, he didn't watch anything about the victims, as far as we know.
No,
just the one that was about him.
Imagine that. Imagine that. I know. And Sippity, thank you so much for coming on here. And
I don't know where she went, if she wants back on or what she's doing.
She was in the middle of dropping.
I don't know anything about the house claimed and then later destroyed. I'm pretty sure that had something to do with the family. They wanted it destroyed because they didn't want, people didn't want the reminder there. Actually, I think it was a school. They didn't want the reminder there.
I was gonna say either the school or
probably the family and the school.
The people that owned the home that rented it out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they wanted any more of that.
Because every time you walk by it, what do you see? Exactly. And I think it was the reminder of it. And they already had everything they needed out of it anyways. They didn't even need it. But they already had recreation and all that anyways.
Yeah.
And everything that they needed, pictures and all that. I don't think that they really needed that. They weren't going to walk figures through the house,
Yeah. And the students don't need to be reminded about all that happening. Their friends are gone. Nothing's going to bring them back.
And it's a reminder. You can't get over the trauma if it's sitting there and you remember what happened in there. It's not something, that's not going to go away. But
just remember, energy imprints happen.
Yeah, no, the energy is probably still in the ground.
Yep. Exactly. That's why when people say, "Oh my gosh, like this one house happened 50 years ago," well, hello. If the energy's still there, things are not going to change.
That's called an energy imprint. Yeah.
That's why when serial killers study other serial killers, they actually almost walk the same pathway. Yeah. Because that energy's there. It's just insane. It's absolutely insane.
Man. It's REM pod night tonight, apparently.
Apparently. Everybody's here. Yay.